This is the Story Archive. The first day. The first day of school always feels bigger than it really is. The night before, everything seems important. What you wear, where you sit, who you talk to, who notices you, and who doesn't. She was 13, old enough to care what people thought, young enough to think everyone was watching. It was the first day at a new school. New building, new classmates, new teachers, new everything. She didn't know anyone there. Not really. One girl from her old school had also transferred. But they weren't close. Just familiar enough to make the situation feel slightly less terrifying. She woke up earlier than she needed to. Checked the time. Checked it again. Then lay there staring at the ceiling, trying to decide what kind of person she wanted to be that day. Confident, quiet, funny, invisible. She didn't know yet, so she got up and started getting ready. Picking clothes took longer than it should have. Everything felt wrong. Too casual, too dressed up, too childish, too obvious. She changed 3 times before finally deciding on something simple, something safe, something that wouldn't stand out. At least that was the plan. When she got to school, the hallways were already loud, lockers slamming, people laughing, groups forming instantly like they had known each other forever. She walked slower than everyone else, not on purpose. Just because she didn't know where she was going, or where she was supposed to belong. Her first class was English, room 214, second floor. She checked the paper in her hand at least 4 times on the way there, just to be sure. When she walked in, most of the seats were already taken. That moment every new student dreads. Walking into a room where everyone else already has a place. She scanned the room quickly, looking for an empty desk, trying not to make eye contact with anyone, trying not to look lost. There was one seat open near the middle of the room. Not front, not back, middle. Safe enough. She walked over and sat down, put her bag on the floor, looked straight ahead. Pretended she had always been there. A girl sitting next to her leaned over slightly. "Are you new?" she asked. Her voice wasn't mean, just curious. She nodded. "Yeah?" The girl smiled. "I thought so. I've never seen you before." She didn't know what to say to that. So she just smiled back. Small, careful. The kind of smile you give when you're not sure what comes next. Class started. The teacher talked. People introduced themselves, said where they were from, said what they liked. When it was her turn, she stood up, heart beating faster than it should. "My name is..." Her voice sounded quieter than she expected. She cleared her throat. Started again. "My name is..." This time it came out right. She said where she moved from, said how long she had lived there, said she liked art, then sat down quickly, hoping that was enough, hoping nobody noticed her hands shaking. For the rest of the class, she focused on the desk, on the notebook, on anything that wasn't the feeling of being the only person in the room who didn't belong yet. Between classes, the hallways were worse. Everyone seemed to know where they were going. Everyone seemed to know someone. She walked with her schedule in her hand, trying to look like she was supposed to be there, trying not to look like she was counting the minutes. At lunch, she almost went to the bathroom just to avoid the cafeteria, but she didn't. She told herself she wouldn't. She walked in, tray in her hands, heart beating again. That same feeling. Where do I sit? There were tables everywhere, groups everywhere, no obvious place, no obvious invitation. She stood there for a second too long, long enough to feel it. That moment when you think everyone can tell you don't know where to go. Then she heard a voice. "Hey!" She looked up. It was the girl from English, the one who had asked if she was new. "You can sit here if you want," she said. Just like that. No big deal, no long conversation. Just a small space opened at the table. She sat down, carefully, trying not to look too relieved, trying not to look like that one sentence had just saved her entire day. They talked a little. Not much, just names, classes, teachers, normal things. But it was enough. Enough to make the room feel less loud. Enough to make the day feel possible. When she got home that afternoon, her mom asked the question everyone asks. "How was your first day?" She shrugged. It was okay. That was all she said. Because she didn't know how to explain how something small could feel so big. How one empty seat, one question, one invitation to sit down could change the whole day. Years later, she barely remembered the classes, didn't remember the homework, didn't remember the locker number. But she remembered that moment standing in the cafeteria, tray in her hands, nowhere to go, and one person saying, "You can sit here." Sometimes the first day isn't about being confident. It's about finding the one moment that makes you feel like you might be okay. What was your first day like? Did it go the way you expected, or not at all?
The Babysitter. Some memories don't feel embarrassing until years later. At the time, they seem important, serious, like the biggest moment in the world. Then you grow up and realize you were just a kid trying too hard. He was 12, old enough to think he understood things, young enough to understand nothing at all. His parents had hired a babysitter for the summer, not because he needed one, at least not the way little kids do, but because both of them worked late, and they didn't want him home alone every day. He didn't like the idea at first. 12 felt too old for a babysitter, too old to be watched, too old to be told what to do. That was before he met her. She was 16, maybe 17. He never knew exactly. Old enough to drive, old enough to seem like a real adult, but still young enough to feel completely different from anyone he knew at school. The first time she showed up, he tried to act like he didn't care. Sat on the couch, didn't say much, just nodded when she talked. Pretended he had better things to think about. Inside, though, he noticed everything. Her shoes, her voice, the way she laughed at something his mom said. He didn't know what the feeling was, only that suddenly he wanted her to think he was cool. The problem was he had no idea how to do that. At 12, being cool means guessing, and guessing wrong most of the time. One afternoon, she came over like usual. His parents left. The house got quiet. She sat at the kitchen table, scrolling on her phone. He stood there for a minute, trying to decide what to do. He could go to his room, play video games, ignore her. That would be normal, but normal didn't feel right that day. He wanted to do something impressive, something that would make her notice him, something that would make him seem older, stronger, more interesting. He just didn't know what. Then he saw the toolbox. It was sitting in the corner of the garage. His dad had been fixing something earlier. The lid was open, tools everywhere. And suddenly he had an idea. Not a good one. But at 12, it felt perfect. He walked back into the kitchen, trying to sound casual. "Hey," he said, "do you know how to fix stuff?" She looked up. "Fix stuff?" "Yeah, like tools and things." She shrugged. "A little, I guess." He nodded. Like this confirmed something important. "I fix stuff all the time." He didn't, not even a little, but it sounded right when he said it. She smiled slightly. "Oh yeah?" He nodded again, trying to look confident. "Yeah, my dad lets me use his tools." That part was technically true. He had used a screwdriver once. That counted. He went back to the garage, picked up a wrench, held it for a second. realizing he had no plan. Nothing actually needed fixing. So he looked around until he found something loose. A small metal bracket on the side of a shelf. Perfect. He grabbed it, turned the wrench. Nothing happened. He turned harder. Still nothing. Now he was committed. He kept turning, trying to look like he knew what he was doing, trying to imagine what his dad would do, trying not to think about the fact that he had no idea what the wrench even fit. Then the wrench slipped. His hand hit the shelf. Hard. The bracket came loose all at once. The shelf tilted. A box fell. Then another. Then 3 more. Loud. Way louder than he expected. From the kitchen she called out, "You okay?" He froze. Looked at the mess. Tools on the floor. Boxes everywhere. Shelf crooked. Hand stinging. Pride completely gone. "Yeah," he said, too quickly. "I got it." She walked into the garage anyway. Looked at the shelf. Looked at the tools. Looked at him. Trying to hold a wrench like he had been doing this his whole life. She raised one eyebrow. "You fixing something?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah." Paused, then she laughed. Not mean, not loud, just surprised. "You sure it wasn't already fine?" He felt his face get hot. "Yeah, I just wanted to check it." She shook her head, smiling. "Well, mechanic, you might want to put it back before your dad sees it." They spent the next 10 minutes putting everything back together, or at least trying to. He handed her screws. She held the shelf steady. At one point, she said, "You don't have to try so hard, you know." He looked at her. "What?" She shrugged. "You're already funny. That's enough." He didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded, like he understood. Even though he didn't. Years later, he still remembers that afternoon. Not the shelf, not the tools, not even the bruise on his hand. He remembers the feeling of wanting to seem older than he was, wanting to be impressive, wanting to be taken seriously, and completely missing the point. Because sometimes the moment you try hardest to look cool is the moment everyone can tell you're still just a kid. Do you remember a moment like that? A time you tried to impress someone and it went completely wrong?
What would you have done? If you'd like to hear more documented accounts like this, you're welcome to subscribe. New stories are added each week.